Hello YouTube, Dave here again. One of my favorite series of videos that I've been working on in the last little while has been my Through the Ages series. I started looking at the Barbarian class and its evolution as well as the Bard class, and recently I put up a poll for what the next subject should be, and I'll get into that in a later video. But as part of brainstorming and coming up with ideas for the series, I look for inspiration in some of the things that I notice in older D&D books or supplements that really just kind of draw my attention. And one of the things on the most recent survey that I had up on YouTube, one of the options was a discussion on a dragon's breath weapon. Now, honestly, I don't know if there's really enough to it to make a video going over the differences between all the different editions, but there was one reason that I wanted to make the video because there was one version of a dragon's breath weapon in particular that I always found really fascinating and something that I think would be kind of terrifying if they used it today. Now, when we think of a dragon's breath weapon, one of the things that we usually think of, especially from 3rd edition, 4th edition, and 5th edition, so the last 20 some odd years of Dungeons and Dragons, is the concept of when a dragon breathes its breath weapon, the dungeon master picking up a handful of dice, shaking them menacingly, and then dropping them onto the table, taking your time to add them up while calling out every grouping of 10 that you can, making your players feel very uncomfortable. And that's me. I do that. My players actually call me out on it now, but it's still something that as a DM I really enjoy because it's one of the perks of the job. But that's not the way that breath weapons have always been done. In fact, if we take a look at the basic expert or the BECMI version of Dungeons and Dragons, such as the Rules Cyclopedia, you might note that dragon breath weapons were significantly different, and in a way that in today's modern D&D game would be absolutely devastating. So we're going to take a look at page 171 of the Rules Cyclopedia here. Or sorry, page 170, I meant to say. And we're going to take a look here, and we're just going to zoom in on the dragon's breath weapon here. So it says for the breath weapon, it says all dragons have a special attack called their breath weapon. Any dragon can use its breath weapon up to 3 times each day. Now that's actually a mechanic that has also changed. In 3rd edition D&D, the dragon had to wait a number of rounds before they could use their breath weapon again, equal to 1d4 plus 1, so anywhere from 2 to 5 rounds. However, they could use it an unlimited number of times per day. And then with 4th edition and 5th edition, you would roll a d6, and on a certain roll on the die, you would be able to regain the use of the breath weapon. Back in the old days, the dragons got to use their breath weapons 3 times per day, and they would have to recharge by getting a full day's sort of rest in before they get their breath weapon back. But that's not what we're actually here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is the way that the damage was dealt. So the number of points of damage the breath weapon does is equal to the dragon's current number of hit points. Any damage done to a dragon will reduce the damage it can do with its breath weapon. Now, back at this point in time, dragons' hit points weren't as massive as they are today, but considering that you stopped gaining real large amounts of hit points after usually 9th or 10th level, it still makes the fact that a dragon could do 70 points to characters that might only have 40, 50, or 60 points, could still make it pretty devastating. But the reason that I actually really like this mechanic is that it actually shows the effect that injuries can take on the dragon. Now, in modern D&D, if a dragon did points of damage equal to its current hit points for its breath weapon, it would make dragons horrifying since a lot of dragons have 100, 200, to 300 hit points. So it's the kind of thing that would actually make a dragon encounter incredibly dangerous and might actually require the players to spend a lot more time preparing for a dragon encounter. And if they see a dragon randomly, they might just run from it because they know at that point in time that they're not equipped to actually deal with it. Something that might actually make for an interesting premise, maybe not for a full long-term campaign, but it might be an interesting one-shot to try, I'm not going to lie. But I like the fact that the closer the dragon comes to death, the weaker their breath weapon gets because their body is just physically unable to put out the same amount of energy that they did when they were healthy. The slashes, the stabs, the spells that damage the dragon, the bodily wounds that it takes actually has an effect on the dragon's breath weapon output. And I just think it's a really interesting mechanic, sort of like, again, in a way that old school D&D kind of made the dragons feel a lot more terrifying than they currently are. Again, hit point scaling is definitely not the same back then as it is now, but yeah, it's just a really cool system. It's a really interesting mechanic, and again, it makes a dragon's breath weapon a very deadly attack that you can't just, tank or assume that you're going to be okay. It's just sort of, like I said, an interesting footnote, I guess, from the history of D&D. So let me know in the comments below. Have any of you played old school and gone through the dragon encounters? Did you survive that opening breath weapon? Were you relieved when the dragon used all three of its breath weapons for the day and you were still alive? Or would you like to see something like this come back in modern D&D? Would you like to see a 5th edition dragon do amount of damage with its breath weapon equal to its current health? Do you like the idea that the weaker the dragon gets, the less power it can put behind its breath weapon? Just let me know that in the comments below. Like I said, it was just sort of an interesting idea, sort of a cool mechanical concept from a bygone era that I just, think that it would be kind of cool to put out there and see what people think. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.